Today I'm going to speak about tricks how to scan cars without markers, or how to avoid the additional stress that is caused by markers as much as possible. Of course, this is not just a topic for car scans, but it's a very big topic in car scans, because you can imagine if you have a big object, you have a lot of markers, and there will be quite a lot of time in your overall process that will be spent on sticking markers or removing them. So, and afterwards you are going to understand why this Porsche was having the blanket on its back window. No, it wasn't freezing. Even if batteries perform better under higher temperature, it was really some scan issue, and it is a help part that I use quite frequently to avoid markers. So, see more.
So, in this moment we are in the rear of a over 30-year-old Mercedes-Benz V201 that still has its, let's say, amateurs that really love that car. In this case I want to explain how you can scan, for example, interior heavens without applying markers. I just use it as an example because we normally have, let's say, prototype cars or other old cars that have, let's say, a value where it is really difficult in the case of harm, because of applying markers or spray, to replace it, because even the parts don't exist anymore. And I show you how I did in the times when I did more cars, solve the problem of not applying markers. I'm using in this case a white light scanner, and for this scanner it is an Arctic EVA. It's not possible to use markers anyway. And I applied the tissue I showed you before from the outside of the window, the back window, and I'm using the curvature of that tissue to make an alignment. That means if you create a scan shell, each frame of the scan is a shell that is, let's say, interconnecting, because it's fitting into each other. And here I have inside that area, I have the problem, if I don't use a tissue, that the scanner is just seeing some area that's not changing. That means he thinks it is, let's say, all the same, and he's trying to align that, let's say, scans, and he's putting them into each other. That tissue gives him, let's say, a lot of features that he can use to, let's say, connect the shells in a fine way. And even if it might work without the tissue, it might happen that you afterwards will measure 2 points on your scan, and you will realize that actually they are 4 centimeters closer to each other in the scan compared to real life. And that's not what you want to have, because sometimes the software isn't realizing that there is, let's say, no curvature change, and it's putting the scans into each other. What for the software seems to be fine in its tolerances, but what will create a result that you might not want. So I will show you right now what is the effect if you are scanning. I'm scanning out of the window, and you will see right now just the tissue. And if I come up, I can see that heaven of the car. And even if the curvature is not changing inside the scan field, he will know where he is because of the relief that the tissue creates. And even with a white light scanner with no capabilities of using markers, you will be absolutely fine scanning that area. Just make sure that you are always scanning a part of the tissue with it.
The same thing can of course be applied scanning carrossery parts. In this case I'm scanning the trunk, and even without an application of any kind of the scan sprays, I will be able to scan the trunk. In this case I will have to dislocate the tissue in chapters. And always keep in mind you have to partly scan the tissue that you have. So of course it's not always possible to avoid markers depending your scanner and the quality of results that you want to generate. In the following minutes I'll show you some tricks how to avoid a lot of work and time consuming preparation without sacrificing your results. So for applying the markers on the carrosserie and not peeling them off in hours of work, I'm using one expensive 3M, and there is different ways to do it. There is a lot of guys who are applying the tape just on the part that they want to scan in long stripes. Or there's guys who are using the tape in let's say partial islands. You can leave off a little bit in the back to peel it off, and of course you can later on, if you want to really scan the part, it's just a demo in this case, just go above the scanning area with your tape stripe. That's not an interest anymore, so you can cut it away from the STL later on, no trouble, and you will be fine off. So if you use the big stripes, start to apply your markers. Distance between the markers, I recommend, depending the curvature on your surface, something around about 4 or 5 centimeters. It can be 10, but it might make your system, let's say, more stable if you use more, and as you don't have to peel them off later on with a lot of work, it will be fine. So as this is a very thin tape that's mainly paper based but with some polymer, let's say, component of it, it's not really let's say, increasing the thickness of your surface. So if you have not, let's say, a very important task of measuring in let's say 0.04 or 5, let's say, quality, you can just use the result as it is. You don't have to relocate the tape stripes. I will do that because I can avoid like that any kind of the interference in the result and just be fine. And you don't have to scan the whole area again, like explained in a previous video. It's just enough if you scan the areas where you have applied, let's say, the stripes before, and that's it. And of course, I would be faster doing this with an EinScan UE 11 or another scanner of the UE generation, but this is just for demonstration. So
To avoid that stripes in my result, I just peel them off, apply them in different areas. You can as well use, let's say, a bottle and roll that stripes on the bottle to reuse it. No problem, even on another day. Just like I explained you, don't take bad quality here because it might have an impact on your paint.
So the first topic will be aligning that two doors against each other. I already pre-aligned them. I'm using here geometry alignment. That would be fine because there is enough feature-based overlapping. And what you will see right now is that we have here both scan results overlapped, and we have 4 stripes, of course, visible because each of the stripes was repositioned, so it's, let's say, visible 2 times. So to get rid of that, first thing that I will do is to look for okay, I should select, of course, that project that I want to work on. I will, with the polygon tool, cut out my stripes that I created, and same thing for the stripe below. Okay, and you can see here that we still have all the mesh filled. I'm going to process the results. Okay, so that would be the result just as a door without creating a volume. I could right now cut it free and get rid of that parts that I don't want to. And this would be the outer shape of the V or W201 Mercedes. You can, of course, flatten that surface and so on. That is, let's say, a little bit noisy because of the fact that the scanner was run in a very low temperature where it was not calibrated, but anyway, you will be fine. But is there a way to use markers without sticking and removing them at all? Yes, it is. We use that scan mesh, we call it, since 2018 when we scanned a couple of car seats and we didn't have a lot of time for doing that. And it's a quite simple way to avoid sticking markers on the objects and removing them. But of course it has some advantages and disadvantages like all techniques. So to create a scan mesh, you are using normal markers that you can stick on objects. That means like normal glue markers. And the trick is to take them off the foil and to glue them to the nodes of the mesh. First by their own sticking capability, and afterwards we're taking the heat gun and we're putting a drop of hot glue on the backside that we will not lose them by moving it very quickly. But as you can see, it's like any kind of investment. You will have to do the work just before, and to create a scan mesh, depending the size you want to use it for, is quite a lot of work. So I think it's worth anyway to invest the time one time and do it, because it will save you a lot of sticking time and as well markers that you will have to pay for. So after the work is done, it's time to enjoy. And here I used some plastic cover for a gearbox tunnel to do a test scan very quickly, and I will scan it from one side, and afterwards I will dislocate the mesh a little bit to avoid too many, let's say, covered areas on the surface. Scan it again, and we will superposition both results. So first view was done. Right now the mesh is dislocated slightly by a half increment, and is done on the other area again where it was covered. After finishing the second scan, it's time to clean the scans. And after all residuals from the mesh are cleaned, then it's time to superposition both scan results and merge them to create an STL file. So I would say this is a really good result. Of course you can do some makeup in Geomagic Essentials or some third-party software, but this is not content of that video here. So we are finishing with the scan mesh so far. You know what you need to know for using it, and maybe we'll cover some more in another video.